I never imagined that my perfect life would unravel in such a catastrophic way. For 10 years, I believed I had it all: a loving husband, a beautiful home, and the kind of stability I had craved since childhood. Peter, my husband, was everything I could ever want in a partner: caring, supportive, and so reliable that I often bragged to my friends about how lucky I was. One of those friends was Sarah, my best friend since college. She was like a sister to me, a constant presence in my life, and the godmother to our 2 children, Lily and Max. Never once did it cross my mind that she could betray me in the worst way imaginable. The unraveling began on a Tuesday evening, a day like any other. Peter was running late from work, or so he said, and I was at home juggling dinner preparations and homework time with the kids. Lily, our 9-year-old, was complaining about her math problems, while 5-year-old Max was busy spilling his juice all over the counter. Amid the chaos, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Can we talk? It's urgent, asterisk. My stomach nodded. Sarah rarely sounded so serious. I called her immediately, stepping into the quiet of the laundry room for some privacy. Her voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable. Anna, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how to say it, she began. What's going on? I asked, alarmed. There was a long pause. I'm pregnant. For a moment, relief washed over me. This was good news. Sarah had been trying to have a baby for years with her boyfriend, Eric. But then she added, it's Peter's. The room spun. I leaned against the washing machine, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Surely, I'd misheard her. What did you say? I whispered, my voice trembling. I'm so sorry, Anna. Peter and it happened months ago. It was a mistake, but I hung up. My mind refused to process the words. This had to be some kind of cruel joke. Peter? My Peter? And Sarah? My best friend? It couldn't be true. But deep down, I knew Sarah wasn't the type to lie about something like this. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I don't remember how I got through dinner or put the kids to bed. My hands were shaking as I waited for Peter to come home. When he finally walked through the door, smiling like nothing was wrong, I felt a surge of anger so intense it almost scared me. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold and unfamiliar. He froze, his smile fading. What's wrong? He asked, his brows furrowing. I didn't mince words. Sarah called me. She told me everything. The color drained from his face. For a moment, I thought he might deny it, but then he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Anna, I'm so sorry, he said. The apology only fueled my rage. Sorry? That's all you have to say? I shouted. You betrayed me with my best friend. And now she's pregnant? Do you have any idea what you've done? Peter tried to explain, but his excuses only made things worse. He claimed it was a moment of weakness, that he never meant to hurt me, and that he still loved me. But how could I believe him when every word out of his mouth felt like another betrayal? I kicked him out that night. He begged to stay, pleaded for a chance to make things right, but I couldn't even look at him. I needed time to think, to process the sheer magnitude of his betrayal. The days that followed were a nightmare. Everywhere I turned, there were reminders of Peter and Sarah. The photos on the wall, the gifts she had given the kids, even the couch where she and I had shared countless cups of coffee and heartfelt conversations. How could she have done this to me? I avoided her calls and texts. Peter, too, kept trying to reach out, but I ignored him. Instead, I threw myself into taking care of the kids, trying to shield them from the chaos that had upended our lives. But even that wasn't enough to distract me from the pain. At night, when the house was quiet, I lay awake replaying every moment of the past few months, searching for signs I might have missed. Had there been hints of an affair? Glances or touches I hadn't noticed? The more I thought about it, the more I began to question everything. Then one evening, Sarah showed up at my door. I wanted to slam it in her face, but something in her expression stopped me. She looked as wrecked as I felt. Please, Anna, she said, her voice breaking. Just hear me out. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling as she tried to find the words. "I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to," she began. "But you deserve to know the truth." What followed was a story I could hardly believe. Sarah claimed the affair hadn't been about love or even lust. She'd been going through a rough patch with Eric, and Peter had been there for her in a way Eric hadn't. One thing had led to another, and before they knew it, they had crossed a line neither of them could uncross. She swore it had only happened once, but the damage was already done. I wanted to hate her, to scream at her, but all I felt was an overwhelming sadness. We had been friends for so long, shared so much, and now it was all ruined. As she left, I realized that no matter how much I wanted to repair things, some betrayals cut too deep. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't let Peter or Sarah dictate the terms of my life anymore. I needed to take control, not just for myself, but for Lily and Max. They deserved a mother who wasn't consumed by anger and heartbreak. It was time to rebuild, even if I had to do it alone. 3 weeks passed, each day heavier than the last. Peter had moved in with a friend, leaving me to navigate the wreckage of our life alone. The kids noticed his absence, of course. Lily's eyes would fill with questions she didn't dare ask, and Max, too young to understand the complexities, simply cried for his daddy at bedtime. I did my best to comfort them, but I was drowning myself, each moment a struggle to stay afloat. One night, while sorting through old photo albums in a futile attempt to distract myself, I found a hidden envelope wedged between the pages of a family trip to the Grand Canyon. Inside was a handwritten letter. It wasn't addressed to me, but to Sarah. My heart pounded as I unfolded the paper, my eyes skimming the familiar scrawl of Peter's handwriting. The contents of the letter sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. In the letter, Peter confessed to feelings he'd had for Sarah long before their betrayal. He wrote about how she understood him in ways I never could, how he felt alive when he was with her. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a betrayal rooted in something much deeper. My hands trembled as I read the last line. Asterisk, I wish things were different, but they aren't. I love you, Sarah. Asterisk. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to scream, to tear the letter to shreds, but instead, I sat there frozen, my mind racing with questions. How long had he been lying to me? Was everything about our marriage a facade? And most importantly, how could I ever move on from this? The next day, I called my sister, Emily, the one person I trusted completely. When I told her everything, she insisted on coming over immediately. By the time she arrived, I was a mess, pacing the living room with the letter clutched in my hand. This changes everything, Emily said after reading it. You need to confront him. He can't just walk away from this unscathed. Her words struck a chord. For weeks, I had been paralyzed by my pain, letting it control me. But now, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a victim in this story. I was a mother, a woman who deserved answers, and perhaps even justice. That evening, I called Peter and told him to come over. He sounded hesitant, but agreed. When he arrived, he looked disheveled, his eyes shadowed with guilt. I wasted no time. I found your letter to Sarah, I said, holding it up. His face went pale. Anna, I can explain. No, I interrupted. You've done enough explaining. I want the truth, Peter. All of it. No more lies. What followed was a painful, tear-filled conversation that left no stone unturned. Peter admitted that he had harbored feelings for Sarah for years, but had convinced himself it was harmless. He claimed the affair was an impulsive mistake, but I wasn't sure I believed him. How could I, knowing what I did now? Do you love her? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Peter hesitated, and in that moment I knew. His silence was louder than any words he could have said. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I love you, Anna. But I can't deny that I have feelings for her, too. Those words were the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. Any hope I'd held on to, any dream of reconciliation, shattered in an instant. I told him to leave and not come back until we'd figured out the logistics of divorce. He begged for another chance, but my resolve was firm. There was no coming back from this. After he left, I sat in the quiet of the house, the weight of everything pressing down on me. For the first time, I allowed myself to cry, not just for the loss of my marriage, but for the woman I used to be, the woman who believed in happily ever afters and trusted without question. That version of me was gone, replaced by someone hardened by betrayal and heartbreak. But the story wasn't over. A week later, I received a call from Eric, Sarah's boyfriend. He sounded distraught and asked if we could meet. Curious and a little wary, I agreed. We met at a local coffee shop, and as soon as I saw his face, I knew he was as shattered as I was. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice shaking. "Sarah hasn't been honest with you. Or with Peter." My heart raced as he explained. According to Eric, Sarah had been seeing another man around the same time as Peter. There was a very real possibility that the baby she was carrying wasn't Peter's at all. The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. Could it be true? And if so, what did it mean for all of us? I left the coffee shop with more questions than answers. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope, though I wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was the possibility of vindication, or maybe it was the realization that Peter's betrayal, while devastating, might not have been as all-encompassing as I'd thought. That night, I called Sarah. When she answered, her voice was wary, as if she knew the conversation wouldn't be pleasant. "We need to talk," I said. "And this time, I want the whole truth." Sarah hesitated on the other end of the line, but after a long pause, she agreed to meet. We arranged to meet at her apartment, a place I hadn't been since the betrayal came to light. Stepping into her space felt surreal, like walking into a distorted memory. The familiar scent of vanilla candles and the soft hum of her favorite jazz playlist were almost too much to bear. Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, looking as though she hadn't slept in weeks. Her once bright eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, and her hands nervously twisted a tissue into shreds. "I know why you're here," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I'll tell you everything. No more lies." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, but the memory of her betrayal quickly extinguished any sympathy. "Then start talking," I said, crossing my arms. "Who's the father of your baby? Is it Peter or someone else?" Sarah's face crumpled as she admitted the truth. "I don't know," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It could be Peter, but it could also be Mark." "Mark," I repeated, stunned. "Who the hell is Mark?" "He's someone I met through work," she said, her voice trembling. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but Peter and I had already, And then things with Mark happened. It's all such a mess. A mess. That was putting it lightly. My stomach churned as I processed her confession. Peter's betrayal had been bad enough, but now I was tangled in a web of lies and infidelity that seemed to have no end. "Have you told Peter about this?" I asked, my voice sharp. Sarah shook her head. "I couldn't. I didn't know how to," she said. "But he deserves to know." "They both do." "And what about me?" I snapped. "Did I deserve this? Did you think about what your actions would do to me, to my kids?" Her silence was answer enough. I left her apartment without another word, my anger burning hotter with every step. The next day, I called Peter and told him everything Sarah had said. He was shocked, of course, but also strangely calm. Too calm. It was then that he dropped another bombshell. "Anna, I need to tell you something too," he said, his voice heavy. "I've been seeing a therapist trying to make sense of everything that's happened. And during one of our sessions, something came up." "What?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Sarah wasn't the only one," he admitted. "There was someone else. Years ago. It didn't mean anything, but it happened." The words hit me like a physical blow. How much more was I supposed to endure? First Sarah, now this? My entire marriage felt like a lie, a carefully constructed facade that was crumbling faster than I could keep up. "Who?" I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. "Who is she?" "It doesn't matter," he said. "It was before Sarah, before any of this. I've been trying to figure out why I keep making these mistakes, and..." "Mistakes?" I interrupted, my voice rising. This isn't just a mistake, Peter. This is our life, our family, and you've destroyed it. He tried to explain himself, but I couldn't listen anymore. I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. For days, I wrestled with my emotions, torn between anger, heartbreak, and the faintest glimmer of hope that I could rebuild my life from the ashes. Then, one evening, Emily showed up unannounced, her face lit with determination. "You're not doing this alone," she said firmly. "We're going to figure this out, one step at a time. But first, we're getting answers." Emily's plan was simple but effective. We arranged a meeting with both Peter and Sarah, determined to get everything out in the open. It was an awkward, tension-filled gathering at my house, with Emily acting as the mediator. "Let's lay all the cards on the table," Emily began. "No more lies, no more half-truths. We need to know the full story." Peter and Sarah looked at each other, their expressions a mix of guilt and fear. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. Sarah admitted that she'd been feeling neglected by Eric, and Peter confessed that he'd been struggling with feelings of inadequacy in our marriage. They had leaned on each other in moments of weakness, and one bad decision had snowballed into the chaos we were now living. But the biggest revelation came when Sarah admitted that she'd already taken a paternity test. "I got the results yesterday," she said, her voice barely audible. "The baby isn't Peter's." The room fell silent. I could see the mixture of relief and devastation on Peter's face. Relief that he wasn't tied to Sarah in that way, but devastation at what his actions had cost us. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The storm wasn't over, but at least now I knew the truth. It was a small step, but it was enough to help me start thinking about what came next. The clarity I felt after the revelation didn't last long. Life had a way of piling on the unexpected, and just as I thought I could start putting the pieces together, another twist emerged. 2 days after Sarah's confession, I received a call from her boyfriend, Eric. His voice was terse, and there was an edge of anger that made my pulse quicken. "Anna, we need to meet," he said. "I have something you need to see." We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Eric's normally calm demeanor was replaced with visible agitation as he slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos, dozens of them. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The images were grainy, taken from a distance, but the subjects were unmistakable. Sarah and another man, locked in intimate embraces, entering a hotel together, sharing moments that left no room for doubt. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice shaking. "His name is Mark," Eric replied. "The same Mark she told you about. I hired a private investigator after I started noticing the lies. She's been seeing him for months, maybe longer." My head spun. Sarah's betrayal extended beyond Peter, beyond me. She had lied to Eric, to everyone, weaving a web so tangled it was hard to see where it began or ended. But Eric wasn't done. "There's more," he said grimly. "She's not just seeing him. She's planning to leave. She's been transferring money out of our joint account, building a life behind my back. I thought you should know." The weight of his words sank in slowly. Sarah's actions weren't just a betrayal of friendship and trust. They were calculated, methodical. And yet, there was still a part of me that pitted her. Whatever she was running from, whatever emptiness she was trying to fill, it had consumed her completely. I thanked Eric and left the cafe, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. That night, I called Peter. Despite everything, I felt he needed to know the truth about Sarah and Mark. When I told him, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I guess I deserve this," he finally said. "I brought all of this on myself." His resignation angered me. "Stop wallowing in self-pity, Peter. This isn't just about you. It's about me, the kids, and the mess you've dragged us into. If you want to fix anything, start by being honest with yourself and taking responsibility." For the first time, he didn't argue. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, even if it means letting you go." Those words hit harder than I expected. As much as I wanted to move forward, the idea of completely severing ties with Peter, the father of my children, was a painful reality I wasn't ready to face. But I knew I couldn't keep living in the limbo he'd created. The next day, I met with a divorce lawyer. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but it was necessary. I needed to protect myself and my children, to start building a life that wasn't overshadowed by betrayal and lies. The lawyer, a sharp and empathetic woman named Claire, assured me I was doing the right thing. "You're stronger than you think," she said, handing me a stack of paperwork. "This is the first step to taking your life back." But even as I began the process of ending my marriage, the drama with Sarah continued to unfold. A week later, she showed up at my doorstep, her face pale and drawn. She looked desperate, a shadow of the confident woman I once called my best friend. "Anna, please," she begged. "I need your help." I almost laughed at the audacity of her request. "Help? After everything you've done? Why would I help you?" Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. "Mark, he's not who I thought he was. He's dangerous, Anna. He's been threatening me, saying he'll ruin my life if I leave him. I don't know what to do." Her words sent a chill down my spine. As much as I wanted to turn her away, I couldn't ignore the fear in her eyes. Despite everything, Sarah was someone I had once cared for deeply. And if what she was saying was true, she could be in real danger. "Does Eric know?" I asked. She shook her head. "I can't tell him. He'll hate me even more than he already does. You're the only one I can turn to." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part, the part that still clung to the person I used to be, couldn't ignore her plea. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help her. That decision led me down a path I never could have anticipated. Over the next few days, Sarah confided in me about the extent of her relationship with Mark. He wasn't just manipulative, he was controlling and abusive. He had isolated her, convinced her to cut ties with everyone who cared about her, and now he was using her secrets against her. I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I reached out to Emily, who immediately jumped into action. Together, we devised a plan to help Sarah escape from Mark. It was risky and complicated, but it was the right thing to do. For all her flaws, Sarah didn't deserve to be trapped in a dangerous situation. As the plan unfolded, I couldn't help but reflect on how far things had spiraled. My life, once so stable and predictable, had become a whirlwind of betrayal, heartbreak, and unexpected alliances. But in the midst of the chaos, I found a strength I didn't know I had. And as I stood by Sarah's side, helping her reclaim her life, I began to see a glimmer of hope for my own future. The plan to help Sarah escape Mark unfolded with a mix of precision and uncertainty. Emily and I worked tirelessly, ensuring every detail was accounted for. We contacted a local women's shelter to provide Sarah with a safe place to stay and enlisted Eric's help without divulging too much about her precarious situation. Despite everything, Eric stepped up. He arranged to transfer Sarah's remaining funds into a secure account, cutting off any financial ties Mark might exploit. On the night of the escape, tension ran high. Sarah had packed only essentials, leaving behind a life that had become her prison. I drove her to the shelter, every glance in the rearview mirror a reminder of the danger we were evading. When we finally arrived, the relief on Sarah's face was palpable. "Thank you," she said, gripping my hand tightly. "For everything." I didn't respond right away. My emotions were too complex, a mix of pity, residual anger, and a strange sense of closure. Helping Sarah, despite the pain she had caused, felt like a step toward reclaiming my own integrity. In the days that followed, Sarah began to rebuild her life. She reached out to the shelter's counselors, started looking for work, and even began writing a letter to Eric to explain everything. She was far from healed, but she was taking her first steps, and that was enough for now. Meanwhile, my own journey toward healing took unexpected turns. The divorce process with Peter was grueling but cathartic. Each meeting with the lawyer, every document signed, felt like shedding a layer of the past that had weighed me down. Peter, to his credit, remained cooperative. He moved into a small apartment nearby and committed to being a present father for Lily and Max. One evening, as the kids played in the living room, Peter stopped by to drop off some of their favorite books. Seeing him with the children was bittersweet. He had caused so much pain, but he was still their father, and in their eyes, he was a hero. As he was leaving, he hesitated at the door. "Anna," he began, his voice tentative. "I just want to say, I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for how I failed you. You deserved better." I nodded, unable to find the words to respond. Forgiveness wasn't something I could offer him yet, but his apology felt genuine, and that was a start. As weeks turned into months, life began to stabilize. I threw myself into work and rediscovered passions I'd long forgotten. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college, and even joined a local art class. The kids adjusted remarkably well, their resilience a constant source of inspiration. Emily became an even bigger part of our lives, her unwavering support a reminder that family wasn't just about blood ties. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with her big, curious eyes. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" she asked. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be happy." And for the first time, I truly believed it. Months later, as the seasons changed and life found its rhythm again, an unexpected message arrived. It was from Sarah. She had found a job in another state and was starting fresh. Her note was brief but heartfelt. "Anna, I'll never be able to undo the hurt I caused, but I'm trying to be better. Thank you for helping me when I didn't deserve it. I hope one day I can repay you. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Take care of yourself, Sarah. That's all the repayment I need. With that, I felt a sense of finality. The chapter with Sarah, with Peter, with all the chaos, was finally closed. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. I had learned to find strength in the most unexpected places and to hold on to hope even in the darkest moments. And as I stood in my kitchen, watching Lily and Max chase each other around the table, their laughter filling the air, I knew one thing for certain. The worst was behind us, and the future was ours to create.